Meeting setting companies, outsourcing lead flow. Why meeting setting companies are surging in B2B. Outsourcing meeting setting isn't a last resort anymore. It's a practical way to protect pipeline while controlling cost. In many orgs, hiring another internal SDR seat has become a six-figure commitment before you know if the rep can consistently produce held, qualified meetings. That's why more revenue teams are treating meeting-setting companies as a core part of modern sales outsourcing, not a temporary patch. The math is hard to ignore. A fully loaded in-house SDR often runs $110 to $150K per year once you account for comp, benefits, tools, management time, and ramp. When internal teams translate that expense into real output, cost per meeting frequently lands in the $821 to $1,150 range. Strong outsourced programs commonly operate closer to $357 to $500 per qualified meeting, which is why outsourced sales team conversations are now happening at the board level. At the same time, buyer behavior has shifted toward digital-first selling, and coverage gaps show up fast when your SDR capacity is thin. Gartner projected that by 2025, 80% of B2B sales interactions would occur through digital channels, raising the bar for consistent omnichannel outreach and fast follow-up. The takeaway is simple. If you want steady lead flow, you need a repeatable outbound motion, not heroics. What meeting-setting companies should own, and what you should keep. A real meeting-setting company behaves like a focused SDR agency, not a scripted call center. They should handle the repeatable execution work, B2B list-building services, research and enrichment, cold email agency operations, and cold calling services that create live conversations and book time on calendars. Your AEs shouldn't receive calendar clutter. They should receive meetings with the right persona at the right account with enough discovery context to progress. The split that works best is straightforward. You keep strategy in-house and you outsource the heavy lifting. We recommend owning your ICP definition, positioning, and qualification checklist internally, then letting your outbound sales agency run the channels and logistics. When you outsource ICP and qualification to a vendor, you're effectively letting someone else decide what your pipeline should look like. And that's how teams end up with random conversations and scattered results. Channel mix is where many providers quietly fail. Research shows 51% of sales pipeline is generated over the phone. So any partner that's email only is leaving a large portion of potential pipeline on the table. The best cold calling companies coordinate calling and email, so each touch increases the odds of a connect, a reply, and ultimately a held meeting. How to evaluate economics using cost per held qualified meeting. If you want an apples-to-apples comparison, stop benchmarking vendors on activity, dials, emails, meetings booked, and normalize everything to cost per held qualified meeting. Held means the right person actually shows up. Qualified means they match the ICP and your agreed criteria, not just that they were willing to take a call. This single metric instantly reveals whether you're buying pipeline efficiency or paying for vanity output. A common internal baseline looks like this. An SDR costing about $11.5K a month and producing 10 to 14 meetings creates a real cost per meeting of $821 to $1,150. A typical outsourced SDR retainer, around $5K a month, delivering similar volume, can land near $357 to $500 per meeting, assuming quality controls are in place. Your numbers may vary, but the unit economics framework is stable across industries. Now layer in performance risk. Internal SDR teams often underdeliver against benchmarks, and inconsistency is more common than most leaders admit. The Bridge Group reported median annual pipeline per SDR around $2.8 million, while other studies cited in our space show many internal teams missing quota at high rates, including a figure of 83% not hitting quota in one widely shared analysis. When your internal motion is below benchmark, outsourcing can be a faster way to de-risk top of funnel while you fix enablement and systems. Choosing the right vendor model and structuring a 90-day pilot. Meeting setting company, SDR agency, and B2B sales agency can mean very different operating models. Some vendors are essentially telemarketing or call center volume plays. Others are modern sales development agency teams that run research, multi-step cadences, discovery-level qualification, and tight handoffs into your CRM. The label matters less than whether the provider can reliably produce held meetings that convert into opportunities. Pricing also varies because risk allocation varies. Retainers are common when you want predictable capacity. Pay-per-appointment lead generation models can work when qualification rules are strict and replacement policies are clear. Hybrids can align incentives when both sides want upside. No matter the model, we recommend pushing every proposal back to cost per held, qualified meeting, and cost per opportunity, not just cost per meeting booked. Treat the first 90 days like an experiment, not a Hail Mary. Pick one or two ICP segments, define what qualified means in writing, and agree on weekly KPIs that reveal early truth: connect rate, positive reply rate, held rate, SQL rate. This approach gives you a clean decision point by weeks 6 through 8 without locking you into a long mistake or churning vendors prematurely. Outsourcing works when you own the strategy and your partner owns the repetition. Then you get leverage without losing control. Building an omnichannel motion that actually converts. Great outsourced lead flow is almost always multi-channel. Phone creates speed and frictionless back and forth, while email creates persistence, context, and an easy path to scheduling. When a cold calling agency and a cold email agency operate as one system, calls and emails reinforce each other, raising connect rates and improving meeting quality. Personalization is no longer optional, and buyers will tell you that directly. LinkedIn data shows 78% of B2B buyers strongly agree outreach should be personalized, which means generic sequences are now a fast way to burn domain reputation and brand trust. The practical standard is relevant at first glance, a message that reflects the prospect's role, the company context, and a credible reason to talk. AI can help, but only if it's used to improve relevance, not to spray and pray. Ask any prospective partner how they generate personalization at scale, what data they rely on, and how they maintain compliance and deliverability as email rules change. When we build campaigns at SalesHive, we focus our AI and ops on making outreach more specific, not just more frequent, because volume without relevance is a short-term metric and a long-term problem. Common outsourcing mistakes that waste AE time and how to prevent them. The most expensive mistake is choosing the cheapest pay-per-meeting vendor and optimizing purely for volume. Low-cost shops can hit meeting counts by overbooking weak fits or accepting likely no-shows, and the hidden cost shows up as wasted AE cycles and a damaged brand. If you're going to use pay-per-meeting lead generation, build SLAs around held rate, qualification criteria, and clear replacement policies for no-shows or unqualified meetings. Another failure mode is treating the provider like a black box. If you only get a monthly PDF, you can't diagnose targeting drift, weak talk tracks, or broken handoffs until revenue misses show up a full cycle later. Demand real visibility into sequences, dispositions, and call recordings, and run a weekly working session where you review what's working and adjust quickly. Finally, many teams misjudge ramp time and calendar operations. Even the best SDR agencies need 4 to 6 weeks to refine lists, test messaging, and stabilize meeting quality, so expecting full output in 2 weeks invites churn and resets. Make scheduling frictionless with calendar access rules, buffers, and CRM sync so the vendor can book cleanly and your AEs can prepare properly. Operational guardrails, speed to lead, reporting, and revenue accountability. Speed to lead is one of the highest leverage levers you can control, especially when you're routing inbound or high-intent signals to an outsourced SDR team. Studies summarized in industry research suggest leads contacted within 5 minutes can be up to 100 times more likely to convert than those contacted later. If your vendor can't meet a response time SLA, you're paying for activity while missing the moment that actually converts. To make outsourcing feel like an extension of your team, unify data and accountability. Every activity and outcome should land in Salesforce or HubSpot, and your revenue dashboard should show held meetings, meeting to opportunity rate, and pipeline created by source. If you can't see outcomes at the same granularity as an internal SDR, you'll struggle to coach the system, and you'll revert to guessing. This is also where quality becomes measurable instead of subjective. If the Bridge Group benchmark of $2.8 million in annual pipeline per SDR is your reference point, you can work backward to what your meeting to opportunity conversion and ACV must be for the program to pay off. In other words, you're not buying meetings, you're buying a predictable input to pipeline, and the operating model should make that visible every week. What to do next? A practical path to outsourced lead flow. Start by calculating your true internal cost per held, qualified meeting. Include comp, benefits, tooling, management overhead, and realistic ramp time. Then divide by meetings that were both held and actually qualified. That number becomes your baseline for evaluating any sales agency or outsourced sales team proposal, and it prevents you from overvaluing cheap quotes that create low-quality output. Next, document the strategy you won't outsource. ICP, disqualifiers, qualification checklist, and the why now positioning your reps can defend in a live conversation. Then run a scoped pilot, typically 60 to 90 days, with clear weekly KPIs and direct collaboration between the vendor and your sales leadership. If you do this well, outsourcing becomes an operational advantage rather than an ongoing vendor management headache. Finally, choose a partner that matches your selling motion, not just your budget. If phone matters, and it usually does, prioritize a provider with real B2B cold calling services and coaching, not just email automation. If personalization matters, and it always does, validate process and examples, not promises. At SalesHive, we've built our approach around this reality. A modern sales development agency needs disciplined calling, high-quality data, strong messaging, and transparent reporting to turn outsourced meeting setting into pipeline you can forecast.